You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, Handsrace. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 79, Speaking French and Japanese. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast and conversation with multilinguals. I'm so happy to have this conversation with my guest this week, Danielle, the host of Young, Gifted, and Abroad podcast about her languages of French and Japanese. In this episode, Danielle talks to us about how her interest in Japanese and French grew, starting from the classroom and into anime theme songs and French language cartoons. She tells us how she went to college intending on having a study abroad experience and ended up at an immersive program in Japan for 1 year and in another year at a summer internship in Paris. We talk about what the immersive language experience is like and how being in this situation can be both humbling and emboldening. Danielle talks to us about how she's able to maintain a connection with French and with Japanese while here living in the US, and we talk about being Black language learners and how an Afro-Japanese singer had an impact on her wanting to learn Japanese. Big thank you to Danielle for sharing your language journey with us. And if you're interested in a study abroad experience, please be sure to listen to Young, Gifted, and Abroad podcast for inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode of Speaking Tongues, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts, or like and subscribe on YouTube, so that other language lovers like ourselves can find the show. And if you've been a longtime listener of the show or even a recent listener, you can now support the show on buymeacoffee.com. Links to all platforms are in the show notes. Okay, let's chat. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I'm here today with Danielle. How are you today, Danielle?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to talk with you today. And I like to start each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
My first language is English, and I have also learned French and Japanese in that order.
What languages did you hear, spoken in your home and in your community when you were growing up?
So in my home, it was all English. I grew up in a very diverse area in a very diverse public school district. So I was aware that there are people from all over who spoke different languages. But as far as my household went, it was all English. So yeah, that's what I was exposed to the most.
What other languages were there in that community, in that school district?
Well, not too far away from our subdivision, there's a subdivision that has a really large South Asian population. So from like middle school, really from elementary through high school, I was used to seeing Indian and other South Asian people just around, or even, as classmates and whatnot. And so I, didn't know what languages they were speaking. Like I didn't recognize them, obviously, but I just was aware, like, okay, they come from somewhere else, or their parents come from somewhere else. And when they're just speaking to each other, they speak their own language. It's like, okay, that's just something that I observed at the time when I was younger. There's a significant Latino population as well. Where I live, so I'm in like the Metro Detroit area. So I'm in the suburbs. And where I grew up is right on the edge of another suburb that is mostly Black. So my area also had like a ton of Black families and Black kids at our school. So, which added to the school being more diverse. But of course, we were all mostly speaking English as well. I think I had a neighbor up the street. They were from, I think the father was from Africa, and I never spoke to him, but I was just aware that, oh, he's from somewhere else as well, so.
Right.
Yeah, that's as much as I can remember it on the spot, at least.
What was your experience like learning languages in school? What languages were you offered? What languages were available for students to learn?
Well, at first, I have to say that my interest in French and Japanese actually came from outside of school. I guess I should have mentioned when I was talking about the household thing that like my interest in French and Japanese came from cartoons. So
Cool.
so that was something that I had like found on my own. It wasn't like a staple around the house in terms of exposure to other languages, but uh yeah, with French it was Madeline. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yeah.
I think it was originally a book series, like a Belgian, or it was written by a Belgian guy, children's book series, and then it turned into an animated children's show. And that's what I'm just thinking, it's about these orphans in Paris, and they had this thing they would always say at the end of the episode when all the girls were going to bed, and it would be like, "We love our bread, we love our butter, but most of all, we love each other." It was so cute. It was
That's
so cute.
adorable.
And that's when I first, got exposed to, or even became aware of like this place called Paris, and people speak with these funny accents and say funny words, and oh, they're speaking French. Like, that was when I even became exposed to the concept of there being a place called France that exists and a language called French that exists. And then Japanese came later in high school. I was like into anime, but it wasn't the anime itself, it was the theme songs that I got exposed to. And I was like, oh, like this is what their theme songs sound like. I want to know what they're singing, but I want to know what they're saying in these shows as well. And that's what got me interested in high school. So, my interest initially started outside of school, but in school, in elementary school at the time, I feel so bad because I don't know what funding is like or what it is now for kids in public school trying to learn languages. But at the time, they had this program going where elementary school students could learn either French or Spanish after school. It was like an extra activity that their parents could sign them up for.
Oh, wow.
So, and yeah, so by kindergarten, I had decided I wanted to learn French. And then I think it was either second and third or second and fourth grade. I know I took that after school French class for 2 years. I just can't remember which specific years I did that. And so, that was a really nice introduction. We just learned, basic words, names of colors, names of animals, names of family members. We might have learned like little phrases here and there, or cute little songs, like especially having to do with like the holiday season, or songs that are, made up to help kids learn French, that type of thing.
Right.
I just remember thoroughly enjoying that. I know that the French, I feel like both of those got phased out at some point. I think the French got phased out earlier than the Spanish did because French was had fewer students. I can't remember how many were there the first year I did it, but I know the second year that I did it, it ended up being just me and one other girl who were doing it, who were showing up regularly. So, but yeah, that was really great. I felt like, oh yeah, I wanted to learn this language. Now I'm starting to learn this language. It's so exciting. And I think the French teacher during the second year that I did that program, she said something about how I had a really nice speaking voice, or something, or maybe how I had a nice accent in French. I can't remember what she said. Something about the way I sounded when I spoke. She said something positive, and I was like, oh, okay, well, if the French teacher thinks I'm good, then I guess I must be good, and I wanted to keep going. Yeah, so that was elementary school. And then there was like a gap of like a year or two, and then from fifth grade through high school and through college, and I guess even in a way you could say now, I just have been studying French consistently since then. Like I was in a French class every year from fifth grade through college.
Okay.
Yeah. So fifth and sixth grade, because our school had like K through 4, and then a school for 5 and 6, then a school for 7 and 8, and then a school for 9 through 12. I think they've consolidated the middle years, but at the time that's what it was. I don't remember much about French in middle school, although I did have a French teacher in middle school who did like me a lot. I think her name was Miss Baker or something. And then in high school, yeah, I also had the French teacher there also liked me a lot as well. And I think she was so passionate. I think the middle school teacher was the same, but I had obviously more time with my high school French teacher, and she was so passionate, and she was so she wasn't one of those teachers, like obviously she loved the students that took to the language really well, like me, but she wasn't the type of person who would like mistreat or dismiss students who weren't getting it, you know? She just wanted everybody to learn the language, and wanted everybody to find something about the language that they could connect to.
Right.
And her name was it was Mrs. Nork. Oh, that was her maiden name. Well, yeah, we'll just go with that. Mrs. Nork. She was amazing. I think she might still be teaching. I don't know. But yeah, she really encouraged me a lot. Yeah, she was really encouraging, and wanted me to continue studying French, which I already knew I wanted to do when I went off to college. And then yeah, so Japanese started in high school, and that was, you know, when I got exposed to anime, and especially anime theme songs. And you're asking what our school offered. So elementary school, we had like an after school thing for French and Spanish that parents could sign their kids up for. Middle school was basically middle school and high school, or, you know, fifth grade all the way to 12th grade. It was French, German, and Spanish that was available in our schools. So, you know, I took French, obviously. I think I might have also taken Spanish as an elective for like one semester or something in middle school. So don't ask me. I don't know any Spanish. I learned how to roll my R's really well. And that's basically all I remember from taking Spanish in middle school. Yeah. And so, you know, in high school, I wanted to learn Japanese, but our school didn't offer it. But we had this thing called dual enrollment, where a lot of times if students wanted to, you know, especially for, let's say, math, if a student was like really advanced in math, and, you know, even if like AP wasn't enough for them, or they just wanted to continue to challenge themselves in math or another subject, or if they were like an honors student and they just wanted to try and get some gen ed credits out of the way before going to college, or just make themselves seem more appealing when in their college applications, what they would do is dual enrollment, where they could take a class or two at a local university that was near us. So like part of your schedule, you know, your day-to-day high school schedule would be blocked out for dual enrollment. And during that time, you would be in class at the local university. So I don't remember how I learned I could do that for languages. I don't know if I figured it out myself, or maybe I asked a guidance counselor. I don't remember, but that's what I did, was take Japanese at a local university. And that was after already trying to like teach myself what I could online, like trying to learn the script and everything, and teaching myself how to write, and trying to teach myself different words and whatnot. You know, my formal education in Japanese started in high school. I think it was senior year.
That sounds like a really wonderful opportunity. And I wanted to just take a step back and ask about the Japanese anime theme songs, because I don't know anything about anime. My brother is really into anime, and I know a number of people who are. And the little bits and pieces that I've seen, I feel like, and just correct me if I'm wrong, because I may be under the wrong impression this whole time. I thought that Japanese cartoons were dubbed over in English in the US. So when you were listening to, or when you were watching them, were they in the original Japanese?
So at first, no. I at first got exposed to them on Adult Swim on Cartoon Network.
Right.
So they would be playing the English dub, but the songs were still like, they didn't change the songs at all. It's not like they re-recorded the songs in English. Okay. So all the theme songs were still in Japanese, while what I was watching, what they were airing on TV was the English dub. I think at some point I had found where I could watch it with the Japanese sub, like, online and stuff. But yeah, you are correct in terms of like airing on TV, especially on a channel like Adult Swim or Cartoon Network. Yeah, everything,
Right.
the dialogue was in English for sure.
Which cartoons are we talking about?
Inuyasha was the main one. I don't know what it was about that show, but that one really, well, it was the music. Yeah, the music on Inuyasha, like the theme songs. Because I don't know if you know, but like a lot of times with anime, especially if they're long running, they will switch out the theme songs after a certain amount of time.
Okay.
So then you'll have this collection of music associated with this show. And so Inuyasha was on for a really long time, and they had a lot of different theme songs. And something about that show really sucked me in. There was a song called Every Heart that really was really popular that I really liked. There was another one called Fukai Mori, or Deep Forest, that also I really loved. Yeah, so Inuyasha was one. Death Note was up there. I don't know if I was really into the music because it was kind of like screamo or whatnot, but the show I thought was fantastic. I'm trying to think. Blood Plus. I don't know if people remember Blood Plus. That was about vampires.
Whoa.
I started out really being into anime, and then I kind of like, I guess maybe I grew out of it. I don't know. I don't watch it as avidly as I used to, but yeah, there were so many great ones. There's one that's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember, but Bleach, that's a super popular one that a lot of people know about. Naruto as well. Yeah, so especially if they were long running, then that meant they had like more songs to offer, and I guess more ways to engage people, like people like me who weren't interested in anime at all. And I guess at the time I also thought it was kind of like weird or uninteresting, but somehow the music is what drew me in, you know.
Okay.
So
you studied French mostly throughout your academic career, and then Japanese. So when you got to that point, after that year, when you were taking the Japanese at the college, how did you continue your Japanese study?
I went to I mean, I don't mind saying I went to Michigan State University, and I picked that school because I couldn't earlier in high school I thought, oh, I love French. Let me see if I can try to study in a French speaking country. And I was looking at schools in France and schools in Quebec as well. And if I wanted to go to school out of the country, I was gonna have to like figure out how to pay for it myself, and I wasn't trying to do that. So I picked MSU instead. That ended up being like the most affordable option, but also because MSU is known for having a lot of languages you can study, and it's also known for having a lot of study abroad programs. And those are both things that I was interested in. So at MSU, I knew I was going to major in French. I knew I was going to major in political science. Basically, that's like the general term for what my program was. And then I was like, well, I just want to keep studying Japanese for as long as I can. So I think I had to take a placement test for both languages. For some reason, I don't remember my French placement test, but I'm sure there was one. And then for Japanese, I guess I still had to take a placement test to verify what level I was supposed to be placed in. So I did that. And then I just continued with both of them. You know, I was taking French and Japanese, like, you know, every year. And then one summer I knew I was going to study abroad. I even thankfully got a scholarship specifically for study abroad because I was like within the honors college at MSU. They had like a special scholarship program that was meant for like students doing stuff abroad. So I knew I was going to do that. Yeah, so I basically was just, you know, in my head, it was a given that I was just going to be taking French and Japanese throughout my university years. That was a priority for me. I went to Japan first. I can't remember why I ended up going to Japan first, but I did. And that was summer after sophomore year, I think. For Japan, I went to a place called Hikone. I feel like not a lot of people outside of Michigan know this place. Sometimes some Japanese people don't even know where this place is.
Where is it?
But it's in a prefecture I'm sure someone has like told you before, but Japan is divided up into prefectures.
Right.
So it's in this prefecture called Shiga, and Shiga, I think, has a sister state relationship with the state of Michigan.
Okay.
But they're known for Shiga is one of the things they're known for is having the biggest lake in Japan within it, and
Ooh.
Hikone is right on that lake.
Okay.
So um,
So it makes sense that it's sisters with Michigan.
yes, yeah,
Right.
exactly, because we have all of these lakes here.
Right.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So MSU, there's this program called the Japan Center for Michigan Universities, and I think their US headquarters was on MSU's campus. So I guess for me, that was just the easy option to choose. In hindsight, I realized I didn't really look at other options and stuff. Maybe I should have, I don't know, but it was like, this is right here. So I'll just go with this thing that I know that is available to me.
Right.
So yeah, the Japan Center for Michigan Universities, or JCMU campus, was in Hikone in Shiga Prefecture. So that's where I was pretty much all summer, just like studying Japanese and stuff. I think it was called intensive language and culture, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. It was nice because I knew a lot of people from MSU. A lot of people from MSU had come there. It's open to anyone, but you get like I think you get like maybe it's less expensive. Like maybe you get some money off if you're from a university in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because like I said, their US headquarters was at MSU. So there was a lot of MSU students there. And I don't know, I mean, we'll probably talk about this later, but I just want to note that I think I was one of 2 Black people in the program, and I was the only Black girl at the time. They have all kinds of people come, but at the time I was the only Black girl around. At least, on that campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by that time I was doing 400 level, which was really challenging, but also really lonely because I ended up being the only one in that class.
Really?
Everyone else was too scared. There were other people who had tested into that level, but I think they were like, oh, it might be too difficult, and I want to have time to like hang out with friends or explore. So I ended up being the only one in that class. So it was weird. It was almost like I had private tutoring all day, even though, these were professors who were going around teaching all the other levels, like going between classrooms, but it ended up just being like one-on-one for me during that summer.
So did you still have the opportunity to explore Japan and to immerse yourself in Japanese culture?
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe I didn't have as much time to just because I know some of the other students there, they would go to, because Hikone, I think the closest major city is Kyoto. So a lot of times they would go to Kyoto, and Osaka is also not far from Kyoto either. So they would go to either of those 2 cities to shop or just to hang out. And I couldn't just like go, commute all that way in the train just to like hang out. I think I probably wasn't even interested in doing that anyway. But yeah, I made my way around. I think we all, or a lot of us as a group, went to Nagoya. I think Nagoya, that was the first trip that I went on outside of Hikone. We did a day trip, and that was really nice. Being in a major city in Japan, because Hikone is like, it's not the boonies, but it's still kind of rural, So Nagoya was like the first major city that I went to, and I think I was afraid to travel alone. So I'm glad that first experience was with a group of people, because then I could get used to like how that goes, riding the train and then figuring out the metro within that, larger city, and going here and there, And I also went to Kyoto and Osaka like a few times, I think. I think I did end up going by myself to each of those places on one occasion or another. Okay. And yeah, that's the area that I pretty much stayed around, was like Hikone, Nagoya, Kyoto, Osaka. I didn't go to Tokyo because I think you had to take an overnight bus, and as long as it took to get there, you could only really have a couple of days, and then you'd have to come right back. And I didn't think that would be worth it. And I also didn't really think I had the time. So, you know, maybe I didn't have as much free time because the level I was in was so demanding. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you know, I still got out. I still even just, you know, explored the town we were in, um, you know, when I could. So I don't really feel like I missed out in that regard. Also, if
Okay.
I'm being honest, I tend to be really shy in like new situations and around new people. So it would have taken me some time to feel like get the gumption to, you know, get
Mm,
out there anyway. So
right.
yeah.
And did you have a study abroad experience with French?
Yeah. So some after junior year, I went to Paris.
Mm.
So this was another program that MSU had available, but it wasn't as centralized. You know, they have there's like a center in Hikone that you can go to if that's where you want to go to study Japanese. Whereas the Paris one was more so an internship program than like a traditional study abroad program. So
Oh.
I can't remember what the organization was called. I think it was called EUSA, or USA or USA. I don't know if they pronounced the acronym that way, but it was EUSA. That was the name of the organization that would
Mm-hmm.
place college students in internship programs in Europe. I think that was their focus.
Okay.
And so, you know, so MSU had a relationship with that organization. And so through that, you know, did this program in Paris. The first 2 weeks we had French classes, I think to help us get acclimated with being in the city. And then the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the summer was doing this internship. But then we still had this, I guess, you know, study element to it because I think for my French degree and my political science degree, I had to like keep a log or some sort or write an
Mm-hmm.
essay or some sort at the end of it, you know. So it was still a educational, and it was an internship for, you know, like college credit. So there was still that element to it, even though it wasn't like us being in the classroom
Mm-hmm.
every day. In that instance, it was only 3 people from MSU who went, like including myself, who did that particular program that summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the only Black person out of those 3 people. And my host family was white also. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the advantage of being in Paris is like, it's all kinds of people in Paris. And there's
Mm-hmm.
lots of Black people in Paris too.
Oh
So, you know,
yeah.
that was I didn't feel like I stood out as much as I did
Right.
in Japan,
Right.
you know.
Right. In Paris, I know that their French is it's not only very fast, but it's also there's a lot of slang, there's a lot of,
Mm.
colloquialism. What was that experience like being in Paris and I guess walking around or hearing or even communicating with people and they have their own way of speaking that is, most likely not heard in the classroom.
Yeah. So I think Paris, it wasn't the issue I had wasn't so much understanding the exact words that people said. Like obviously, you know, I didn't know everything there was to know in the language. It's not like I knew all the French vocab there was to know. But it was as you mentioned, the fast talking that I had struggled with because people would talk and I didn't catch all of what they were saying. You know, you have to learn to listen fast.
Right.
And then once you can listen fast, then you can speak a little quickly or a little
Hmm.
quicker, you know. But you
Yeah.
have to be able to listen and understand fast first. I remember there's speaking about the internship, like I was at like an arts nonprofit and they I mean, I know it's typical, you know, admin duty, especially if you're an intern, but I had to answer phones. Now, why they would put the only American person on
Mm-mm.
phone duty when all the other interns and everyone else there is French, I don't know. Maybe they thought it would be amusing, or maybe they thought it would be like, you know, a nice challenge in terms of like, you know, my listening comprehension. I don't know. I don't know. But a lot of times I was put on phone duty and people would call and I would answer the phone and I couldn't understand them because they were talking so fast and I would ask them to repeat themselves and then they would get like annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my host mom helped me understand that like, you know, if they're talking to you and you keep asking them to repeat themselves and they know they're speaking clearly, they're going to think that there's something wrong with you or you're messing with them because they don't, there's, you know, because they're speaking clearly and in their mind, there's no reason why there should be an issue communicating here because they've made themselves clear. And so why are you acting like you don't understand the words that are coming out of their mouth?
Right.
And she said, you know, what you have to do. So my accent was decent. So they didn't know right away that I wasn't American.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, you have to tell them you're American and that I forgot what exactly she said, but if you explain to them that you're American and maybe even ask them to speak a little slower, then they will likely be more receptive.
Mm-hmm.
But just asking them to repeat themselves is gonna you know, tick them off basically because it's not gonna make any sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fast talking was really, you know, especially maybe that's a thing in major cities in general, is that people talk faster, like the pace of life is faster.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in Paris, it's like, yeah, you really have to pick up the pace, and it really starts with being able to listen faster for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah.
I never thought about having to listen faster.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how would I train myself to listen faster? Like, how does it happen?
Yeah. I mean, only thing I can say is just like exposure, a lot of exposure.
Mm.
Because like if you're listening to people talk a lot, maybe you don't understand what they're saying, but then you pick out patterns. And of course you pick out words that you do know,
Mm.
and like you're piecing things together. And then eventually, and that's another thing about language in general. In my head, I always think, oh, I have to know everything about the language. I need to know all the words and all the grammar and everything in the language. Otherwise, I can't say that I'm good in the language,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm fluent in the language. But a lot of times, no matter what language people are speaking, there like are set phrases that people use every day,
That's
like the
true.
day-to-day things that people say. It's not like, you know, like even you and me, we're not using all the words in the English dictionary when we're talking on a day-to-day basis, you know.
Right, right.
So you get used to hearing certain things over and over, and then you just, I don't know, I guess you pick up that same pattern yourself, and you're able to like step in line with the pace of the way people are communicating.
نتكلم. Learn a language, make a friend, change a life. Did you know over a third of the modern day English words come from French? Oui, that's right. You're already speaking more French than you think, so why not take it to the next level? Learn to speak like a native with Natakellam's tutors from displaced backgrounds. French is not your cup of tea? Try one of their 16 other languages and regional dialects. Speaking Tongues listeners get a special 10% off with the code SPEAKING10 at natakellam.com. Natakellam. Learn a language, make a friend, change a life. No, but it makes sense. And I think I was just picking up on the way you said to listen faster.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that I struggle with. Like I have practice with a language partner in Italian every week. And sometimes, because we've been talking for over 6 months. So when he will say something to me in Italian, like he's talking to me like we just ran into each other on the street and we're old pals. And I understand everything that he's saying. And I always have to ask him, like, wait a minute, I got maybe 30% of that. Just say it again, but say it a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can, I pick out maybe, I feel like it's like watching like a Formula One race or something. Like you see the car going by and you recognize it, but before you get a chance to process it, the next car is going by,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, I did pick up on that phrase that you said that, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's something I need to focus on. It's like trying to process this information faster. And you're right. I think it's just exposure. The more you're around it, and you get used to certain things, and
Mm-hmm.
next thing you know, you can do it.
Yeah.
So, how did these experiences abroad, immersed in the languages and the cultures, how did they deepen your desire to want to connect with the languages and to learn them at a higher level, to experience them at a higher level?
It's interesting. It was like, it was humbling but emboldening at the same time, because I feel like both in Japan and in France, it's like, because I would talk to people in class, I'd communicate with my professors, and maybe even go to language related events on campus, but I wasn't always going out of my way to speak to French, like native French speakers or native Japanese speakers on campus. Because, you know, I either didn't have the time or sometimes I'd be intimidated, you know. So, you know, you studying abroad and going to these countries for the first time, it's like, okay, you've spent all these years learning this language in a classroom in a formal setting, but you don't know the rhythms of life here and how language fits into that. I guess it was humbling to have to face the gaps in my knowledge and, you know, not always knowing exactly what to say or not always understanding people right away when they say things the first time. But, you know, that's the point. You know, I was there to learn. So
Right.
that's okay if I didn't, you know or understand everything. So it was being aware of that and almost having to learn. I think I didn't realize until I went there and that you have to basically learn how to do daily life all over again, almost like a child, but in a different language. For some reason, I didn't realize that until I went there, you know. So it was very humbling in that sense. But then it also was emboldening because I realized over time, and especially as I got used to things and I learned more of the language, either in class or through the you know, experiences I was having, that I already had a really solid foundation. You know, I'd spent all these years and I had so much enthusiasm and passion for the languages I was learning. So I had a really solid foundation. And so it was like, okay, I'm here and I feel like I can, you know, like I'm already at a good place and I just have to keep, you know, trying to expose myself to things or keep, you know, challenge myself to speak or, you know, to converse with people in new situations. And it can only get better. And so that was, you know, really encouraging. It's like, okay, yeah, I don't know everything. I don't speak like a native. And I said that one thing and I feel like I sounded stupid and then I couldn't understand what this other person was saying. And I think they got mad at me. And, and that kind of sucked. That felt really bad. But at the same time, it's like, oh, you know, I have a really solid foundation here and I can just keep improving and I can, you know, who knows where my French or my Japanese can go. That was I guess the sentiment that I came away from those experiences with.
Right. How do you stay connected to French and Japanese now that you're living in the US?
Yeah. So, you know, I still keep in touch with some of the people that I met in France and in Japan. It's not super often, but, you know, I still try to keep in touch from time to time. I do have experience working in those respective languages as well, which, you know, helped. And also for me, I remember when I was in Japan, one of my professors, she really valued teaching using what she called authentic materials. So, and I think she also had like a media studies background as well. So she would often like bring in, like, have me watch an episode of some sort of Japanese show. You know, so these are things not meant for Japanese learners, but actual, you know, Japanese people for them to watch. So, and she would use that as the basis for whatever the lesson was that day. And so, you know, that so I think maybe I guess that's the same approach that I take in terms of keeping in touch with my languages. You know, I watch a lot of Japanese dramas. I watch I don't know, for some reason, like French stuff is not as widely available, even though technically it's I guess a bigger language, like used in more parts of the world than Japanese is. But you know, so I try to watch Japanese and French film and TV. I listen to podcasts in those languages. And again, there are, for instance, like Duolingo, they have a really cool French podcast where they do like real life stories about French people. And but that's meant for French learners. So it's like I think they speak at like a medium speed or like a medium level of comprehension so that French learners can understand. And that's a great resource, obviously. So for instance, there's like a show called Le Cheap, and that's a French podcast made by Black French people. And they're talking about, you know, they talk about a lot about Black American culture, just because I guess that's how influential we are, I guess. But it's all in French, you know, like it's French people making their stuff for other French people.
What is the name of it again?
Luchip. So it's TCHIP. I think that's what they call the sound when you like kiss or suck your teeth. Yeah, that. They call that luchip. In French, they call it luchip.
I need to listen to this show. I need to
I think you
listen
would
to
like
this.
it. I actually think you would like it. I'm glad that that actually came to mind because I think that is something you would enjoy.
Okay.
But yeah, so film and TV, podcasts in French and or Japanese. I think I changed my Facebook to French like years ago and then just never changed it back. So there's that. I follow a lot of different news accounts that are in French and Japanese, or follow people who are in France or Japan who mostly post in their respective languages. So yeah, I mean, I think I was watching Japanese dramas before I met that professor that I had in Japan. But I think that idea of using authentic materials, like things that would be authentic to that particular population of Japanese speaking or French speaking people, I think is something that I try to adapt into my life as well. Oh, also radio. I listen to French and Japanese radio sometimes as well, and that helps.
Nice.
So
We are both Black women, for people who don't know, people who are listening and haven't figured it out yet. Um, and I know that, you mentioned a few times just in this conversation about being the only Black woman in your study abroad experiences. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, I've noticed in this language community that there are so few of us. There are so few Black women who are learning other languages, especially languages that I would say outside of Spanish that are very commonly learned and taught in the US, and, maybe in other parts of the world also. Um, I wanted to ask you, what were some of the perceptions and attitudes that you had or that you heard about languages as you were on this path, and if you had any representations of multilingual Black people in your life or in your orbit at all?
I think part of it was I was so headstrong that it didn't really matter what other people might say. But I think I was also fortunate that no one really was, I didn't get anything negative from the people around me, like in my family or whatever. I think it was just something like, oh, Danielle's into languages and international stuff, good for her. So within my family, yeah, I didn't really get anything negative. My mom was very supportive. I think in general, my family really values education. And so it doesn't really matter, I guess, what you're studying, so long as you're getting an education. Because that's, my grandpa was a principal. Like a lot of people, like I said, have master's degrees or even doctorates. Like, well, maybe only a few doctorates, but like educated family. So it's like, okay, this is what you want to study. You're still getting education. You're going to college. Okay, cool. Yeah. So within my family, I didn't. It was either like, very neutral, or it was really positive. It wasn't like a whole lot of negative stuff going on. In my classes, I'm trying to think of representation in my classes. I think through at least from high school and college, there was always at least one other Black girl in all of my French classes. There would at least be one or two. And a lot of times they were Black girls. I don't remember. There were other, in my head, I'm just seeing the faces of a few Black guys here and there who are in my French or Japanese classes. But most of the time, no matter which language class I was in, French or Japanese, there was always at least one other Black girl. So I wasn't the only one, but obviously we were like few, we weren't the majority in our classes. I was thinking about that question about like multilingual representation. I don't think I had any in my immediate circle. And honestly, because now you have like all these like polyglot YouTubers or influencers that people can look to and to get tips on how to learn this language and how to learn a whole bunch of languages and all that stuff. And I didn't have all that, but at the time I don't think I was even looking for all that. I think I was just so focused on like, I want to learn these languages. I want to get good in these languages. I want to go to France. I want to go to Japan. I think I was just focused on myself and what I wanted. I wasn't really looking for an example. Maybe if I was, that would have helped a lot, but I guess I just wasn't thinking about it. But there is one exception. And this is a show that I forgot to mention when we were talking about anime, but there's a show called Full Metal Alchemist. Mm. And that show is another one that's like one of the really big ones that anime people know. And it's two different series. There's Full Metal Alchemist and then Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I think technically, even though Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood came later, I think that's more faithful to the source material. Mm-hmm. At least that's what people say. But when I was in high school, only the first series was available. And so, as I mentioned with the theme songs, they switched the theme songs out. And one of the theme songs was sung by a young woman named Crystal K. And I think the song's called Motherland. And I looked up Motherland and I saw it was this Black girl singing this Japanese song.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, who is this? I had no idea. They let Black girls sing anime theme songs. I didn't. So, of course I looked into her and I learned that she's actually half Black and half, like, her dad's Black American, her mom is Korean, but she was born and raised in Japan. Mm-hmm. So I guess she's like culturally Japanese, or even though she's not ethnically, whatever. For her life is she grew up as a Japanese person, even with all her other cultural influences involved. And so I guess her mom was a singer and then she became a singer as well. And so, she's for all intents and purposes, she's a Japanese singer. Like, that's the entertainment industry that she's been in for much of her life. Mm-hmm. And, so I discovered her and I was like, oh, wow. Like, man, okay. So there are Black people out here. This is before I knew that there were actual, like, regular Black American people also living in Japan for various reasons. But she really had an impact on me wanting to go to Japan, wanting to learn Japanese. I still kind of have this dream of like moving to Japan and becoming a singer.
Do it.
But, she was like she was a huge influence. I don't even know if I would have thought about doing something like that if it weren't for Crystal K. And I still listen to her. I still follow her. She's still active. She's been in the industry for like 20 some years. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's still out here doing it. And she was one of the biggest people in terms of like, I guess, mixed or biracial people. She was one of the first really visible mixed people in Japanese entertainment. And a lot of other people who came after her were influenced by her. Like I said, I wasn't really looking for representation, but when I saw her, I was like, oh man, so like there are Black people like out here doing this. Like, okay. Yeah. And she's just someone I've never forgotten about.
It's so funny you say like you weren't really looking for representation, because I feel the same. Like, I wasn't actively looking for other people who looked like me who were studying these languages. But I guess in hindsight, what I do think about is how much of a difference it would have made for someone like me. If you told me as a kid I couldn't do something, like, I really thought of it as it can't be done. I was never the kind of kid who was like, I'm going to show you, I'm going to do it anyway. And I feel like if I had had, a singer, if I had had an athlete, if I had, a neighbor, just someone that I could have, looked at and said, well, they can do it, I can do it too. I think that it would have made like such a big difference. And I, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is, like I said, I feel like I don't see a lot of us out here in this language community really talking about our experiences and learning, and, especially those of us who do learn languages that aren't maybe as widely spoken around the world. I think like I want to try to amplify as many of us as possible, because maybe there is a girl like me who's, growing up now and people are telling her like, no, you don't need to learn Cambodian, like it's useless. And maybe this is a girl who loves everything about Cambodia, and maybe she, and I don't see any of these experiences as useless, because you never know where they're going to take you,
right,
in life, and who you're going to meet from these experiences. So I think that I'm just going to say, I'm really proud of you for just knowing that this is what you want to do and you're doing
Oh,
it. And I, you know, as somebody as somebody who was younger and just didn't have that courage to speak up for herself, like I really
mm.
love to hear stories of people who just say, you know what, I'm doing it. And if you don't like it, then you can watch me do it.
I really appreciate you saying that. I feel like it's really admirable, the fact that you were like so discouraged when you were younger and now you're doing speaking tongues and you're talking about languages all the time. Like I feel like you also found a way to stay connected with languages, even though you heard so much dismissive things said to you. So, I'm proud
Yeah.
of you as well.
Oh, thanks. It's been a long road, girl, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so another thing we should talk about, because you are out here doing it and you're an inspiration. You are. You really are.
Thank you.
Um,
I'm sorry, please continue. Sorry.
you have a podcast called Young, Gifted, and Abroad. And this is for people listening. We've talked about study abroad experiences and what comes with that. So
Mhm.
your podcast, I love your podcast. What was the inspiration for starting it? For those of us listening, for people listening, tell us what the show is about and some of the topics that you discuss. And most importantly, please tell us where we can listen to it.
Oh yeah, for sure. One thing I forgot to mention talking about representation. Two of my French professors in college were Black.
That's
So
awesome.
there was that as well. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. One of them was from Senegal, and I don't know where the other one was from, but it was two Black women that I had among my French professors in college.
Mhm.
But yeah, about Young, Gifted, and Abroad. Um, so when I was going to France or to Japan and to France, I went to the same lady to get my hair done. Um, so I wouldn't have to worry about it over the summer. And I remember there were other people who said this as well, but I remember she said something like, oh, this is really great. Like, I'm really proud of you doing this. Not a lot of us get to do that. And by us, she was talking about Black people,
Mhm.
right? And that was just something that always has stuck in my mind because I was like, I mean, yeah, I'm a good student, but it's like, there's nothing about me that makes me more deserving of getting to do these things than anyone else. Like, it doesn't seem really fair that not a lot of us are doing this thing.
Mhm.
And so, that was an exchange that I never forgot. And then I think maybe at some brief period of time, I might have considered trying to start a scholarship, but I didn't even know how to do that. And I didn't have extra funds to do that. So yeah. But anyway, I got into listening to podcasts after I graduated from college. And then 2018, I was seeing these different programs popping up where they were gonna like, there were some where they would train you to be a producer, so like behind the scenes stuff, or they would like give you the resources to help you develop your own show, that type of thing. Different
Mhm.
programs popping up in 2018.
Mhm.
At least that's when I took notice. I don't know how long they've been doing that, but yeah. And so I thought, oh well, I didn't think I had anything where I would want to be front and center. But I was thinking, if I had a show, what would it be about?
Mhm.
Um, and so, I was just thinking on that. And then I was like, oh, well, I feel like study abroad would be something I could talk about because that's an experience that I have. Um, like specifically people of color studying abroad. I know people, especially coming from MSU, who have that experience, and just other people in that I know who could speak to that as well. Like, oh, I wonder if I could like get some of them to talk to me and I could record it and maybe that could be a thing.
Mhm.
I could see how that goes. I also needed it was kind of a low point in my life. I think I really needed another creative outlet.
I
So
understand.
that I was because I'm generally a very creative person, but I felt like I needed like a new project of some sort to like, I don't know, feel like I could do things. I don't know. So I was like, okay, let me try starting this podcast. And yeah, that's basically what I did. My first guest was my cousin. And I'm always grateful to her for that. She was very gracious in being my very first guest ever. I decided to call it Young, Gifted, and Abroad because I was reading Lorraine Handsrace's To Be Young, Gifted, and Black at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I thought of the name. I can't remember how the name came to me. Like, I think I was trying to do something like having to, incorporate the fact that I'm talking about Black people or people of color. And I thought, oh, Young, Gifted, and there's Young, Gifted, and Black. Maybe Young, Gifted, and Abroad would be nice. And then I started looking into where the phrase Young, Gifted, and Black came from. And that led me to Lorraine Handsrace. I was reading her biography and really felt connected to her creatively. Like, I feel like I got a lot of inspiration and a sense of direction from reading her work in the process of putting the show together. So it's like, I guess it's almost like a homage to her, the name of the show.
Right.
Of course, a lot of people think of Nina Simone as well, because Nina Simone has that song.
Yeah.
Which I think was a tribute to Lorraine. But yeah, so that's how that started. I started in 2018, so it's been a little over 3 years now. Launched on Juneteenth, 2018, because that was the day I knew I could remember. And yeah, so I talked to various people of color who have studied abroad, and I try to keep it as open as possible. So a lot of people have done like the traditional study abroad program, like I've described, like I've done. But I've also talked to people who have done gap years or presented at professional or academic conferences in other countries, or who have done volunteering abroad or grew up abroad for some reason, or maybe they did a specific fellowship or something that took them to another country. So I try to keep it, or they did grad school in a different country from their home country, so I try to keep it broad while still having that element of people pursuing something academically, or furthering their academic pursuits or something that is of strong interest to them. Oh, you asked where can it be found? So it's everywhere. As far as, yeah, it's everywhere. SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Yeah, all the major places it's there. Acast, Stitcher, all that type of thing. And it's also on younggiftedandabroad.com. I have a website. So what people might not know, I try to say this every time, but what people might not know is there's the episode, right? So you can listen to the interview or see the people when I post about them on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. That's Young Gifted and Abroad, at Young Gifted and Abroad on Facebook and Instagram, and then at YG Abroad on Twitter, in case y'all want to know. But so yeah, there's the episode itself, but also on the website, if you I write a resource list for each episode. So it's like a write-up summarizing our conversation and impressions that I got from our conversation, but there's also a resource list for each episode. So it's like, if you're hearing someone talk about something and you want to learn more about exactly how did you manage to go study manga in Japan, or how did you, what was the name of that scholarship you used to teach in Taiwan, or that type of thing. Or how did you find your graduate school program in Italy? How did that go? So I have a resource list that people can look at as well. And that's great. All on younggiftedandabroad.com.
I will add links to your show and to your social platform in the show notes of this episode, so people can click and they can go check out your show right away.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Danielle, this conversation has been so lovely, so wonderful. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Oh, likewise. Likewise.
I'd like to end each episode with the same question, and that is, do you have any jokes, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in French or Japanese to share?
I do. So for Japanese, there's a phrase that goes, nantoka naru, or nantoka naru sa. And that basically, it can be used in like resignation, or it can be used in like a sense of, really strong hopefulness. But nantoka naru basically means everything will be all right. I think usually it means something like, or like literally, I think it translates to it will become something or another. So, but, it's just that sense of, okay, things will work out one way or another. Everything will be okay, or, it'll turn out fine. Yeah. So it depends on how you use it. Like, again, you could be just saying it like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go, but it's going to be something, or it could be, oh, it's fine. Everything's going to be great type of a thing. So it depends on the context you're using it, but that's nantoka naru. And then for French, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I want to try it.
Oh, yeah.
Nantoka naru?
Yes. Nantoka naru. Nantoka naru. Yeah.
Nantoka naru. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I was saying it quickly, but yeah. Nantoka. Yeah. You were. Wait, you want to try it one more time?
Nantoka naru.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. See? So there's that. And then for French, I don't really have a joke. Well, I have I guess a funny story, if that's okay. I guess the joke was on me in this instance, but it's not like a common French joke or anything. So in my I remember it was my freshman year. It might have been the first French class I ever took at MSU. And I forgot why we were learning this. We were learning like family related words, and yeah, I actually don't remember why we were learning this, but I remember we learned the phrase "fei dodo." I don't know if you heard this phrase. "Fei dodo" is it's like baby talk. So the way it was explained to me, it's like, when parents want their children to go to sleep, they'll say "fei dodo," or it's time to go to sleep, "fei dodo." And I was horrified when I heard that phrase, because I was like, I took it literally, and I thought they meant like they were referring to the actual dodo bird, which is extinct. So I thought when they wanted to go their children to go to sleep, they were telling them like, okay, go be extinct, like go die now. I was like, why would you say that to children? I was so horrified.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it's so silly now that I talk about it. But I thought, literally when they were saying "fei dodo," I thought they were literally saying go be, do like the dodo and go be extinct for a while.
That's wild.
I know. I don't know why my mind went there, but when I heard dodo, my immediate association was the dodo bird, which is extinct. Oh my gosh. Now I feel dumb saying this, but "fei dodo." So dodo is short for dormir, which means to sleep in French. So they're literally just saying go to sleep in a cutesy way. "Fei dodo," it's time to dormir. So, they got rectified pretty quickly, but I just remember at first I was like, I know French humor is probably different, but why are they telling their babies that they want them to be extinct? That's terrible. So in that instance, the joke was on me because I misunderstood what the word was, what dodo was referring to. I love that. So there you go.
Thank you again, Danielle, for this conversation. Before I let you go, don't think about this too hard.
Okay.
But in this situation, after we've been talking for all this time, what would be the best way to say goodbye in either French or in Japanese? Just the first one that comes to mind.
Oh, well, in Japanese, you can always say "mata ne," which means see you later, see you next time. Yeah, "mata ne." It's kind of informal, but yeah.
I like that.
And then French, there's always like, I guess you could say "à tout à l'heure" or "à tout."
"À tout."
Or "à tout à l'heure." Don't quote me. I might be saying "à tout" wrong, but I know "à tout à l'heure." "À tout à l'heure" is like one that you can always use. Or "ciao." A lot of people don't know that French people also use "ciao." So you can say "ciao" to say goodbye if you want to as well.
I like "ciao." So we have "mata ne," "à tout à l'heure," or "ciao." Danielle, for this conversation, thank you so much again, and I'll be talking to you soon.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. I had a wonderful time, and yeah, I look forward to hearing from you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Bye.